All right, you guys are about to jump into a conversation between myself and Abhay Venkatesh. Abhay was hired right out of school into Anduril, where he works on their AI team. He's got a pretty great Twitter presence. I have gone back on things for years and is, I think, as informed as anybody in his seat about how the broader venture capital market goes and exactly what's happening in San Francisco. So we kind of touch base on all the different nodes that you would imagine run into, run through someone who's working on AI at Anduril.
Yeah, it seems like I was talking to your team member Gigi about this, which is like this new era of information. It's just like we're at the altar of the algorithm. Like we're trying to like somehow curry favor with the algorithm and get you know get promoted somehow.
Yeah,
And
it's just
yeah,
in our world especially, it's like just I don't know. Sorry. Yeah, man, we live and die by takes, and the reality is I don't like to sit and write for long periods of time. I'm much better
yeah.
like hot ideas, chat, and sometimes we don't come up with anything, and sometimes we come up with shit that matters. And I'm shocked at the reach it still has. You know what I mean? You'd think this playbook is kind of played out, but like every time I post something, people come through the woodwork. It's brutal because Sam has been right this whole time. It took me a long time to get used to it, but Sam's
But
been
what is
right.
the Sam take on this? What is the
Oh, Sam's thing forever has been like ship everything all the time
right?
because
Yes,
it increases serendipity. Nobody remembers when you have a bad take, and the more shots
they
on
really
goal you
don't.
have, they always remember when you had a good take first. So just be shipping takes
No,
is
that's
like
been my ex strategy. Is like I just post immediately as I thought, and then I just delete it. Right? Like who cares? Like it's
flood the zone.
flood the zone. No, I love that. And also, I think I'm realizing people don't really read. I've been trying to write more for just a variety of reasons, just like to improve my own thinking or just to think through prettier problems. And it's been impossible to get them to read it. Like nobody reads. I don't know. Like
Nobody reads.
nobody reads.
Again, writing is for yourself. I find that writing is for myself and to be able to turn
Yes,
complex thoughts into a 30-second soundbite. I mean, this is
that's
Sam's
exactly
again.
right.
I don't mean to talk about Sam so much, but he's also on team. Elevator pitches don't work anymore. It's got to be a meme.
Wow. Okay.
But it's
Yeah.
also like it's Mark Twain or someone like that who said, "I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one," which is like you got to write it long and then cut it down and then figure out what's meme worthy in there.
I think that sounds right. So like, is that directly translate to when you're doing like a startup pitch?
I think it's right. I think it relates to any novel idea. I think any good. It's kind of what I've decided our culture is at slow, just projected outward. Maybe because we're
Okay.
lazy or we always think we're right. But I always say that like forever around here, it even started with our name. For the first couple seconds, you think you're laughing at us, and then you're laughing with us, and then you ask us to expound on it. We can go for a couple minutes, and then you want more, and we can talk for an hour. And you're like, so you go from like laughing hot take to oh shit, that's actually really thoughtful.
Right.
Does
Is
that
is
make
that the
sense?
meme, which is like it takes you a while to get it, or what is that's why it's slow,
No,
or what do you mean?
no. It's like it's funny, right? Slow is
Yeah.
funny.
Yeah.
But if you ask the origin story, it actually ties back to the slow food movement. So when Sam and the guys were still just investing personal cash, they were going to a restaurant called the Slow Club that was all about the slow food movement, right? Which
Yeah.
obviously highlights organic, sustainable practices.
Right.
And they were all coming out of an era at Facebook where user growth had stalled. They'd done a bunch of inorganics, unsustainable things for a while, and they were all kind of coming around to the fact of like we just need to build like a rad core business over a very long time period, right?
Right.
And so if you think about it, like you actually want to take a slow approach to building badass companies.
Yeah. Generally agree with you. Coming out of like this family of companies like Anduril and Palantir that have taken that. So, that's definitely like my background. And yet at the same time living at San Francisco, or more recently, the thing that's been on top of mind is Fast, which is like billionaire in 2 years, building an AI company. I don't,
Let's
yeah.
let's set the stage because I do think there's some good hot takes and we'll just see what
Okay, let's
happens,
do
which
it.
is like
Let's do it.
again, we don't know each other other than the internet. So here
That's
we
true.
go.
Yeah.
Give you a quick background because you sit in a wild ass seat, which is like you're kind of at the confluence of the two hottest trends while being what I would call like a pretty sanguine principled thinker. I don't know.
Oh my
So give
God.
us like the
I
hot
love
take.
that you say that. Yeah.
I mean,
That's
listen, it's relative in Silicon Valley. So
right, right.
no, so like, talk me through quickly what you've done, so you get a little more street cred with it. You know what I mean? And then, I'd just be curious what the worldview does look like from your seat, and I'm sure I'll have some objectionable takes to it.
Yeah, so just quick background on me. Joined as one of the first hires at Anduril as back when we were still like a garage startup and less than 50 people, and sort of got the opportunity to learn from folks like Brian Schimpf, who had previously built companies like Palantir with Alex Karp as the director of engineering at Palantir there. And in that process, I don't know, like invented a lot of our key systems, like our lattice
What'd you do?
for,
Wait, so what'd you do? What'd you do before there? How do you walk in,
yeah.
both get the offer, but also be like competent enough young to be in that cohort? Because they're pretty ruthless talent folks.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how these stories usually go. So I guess the story there was I just had no background. I only had one job in my life. It's Anduro. So my only background was
That's
like I
kind of
was doing.
that's wild.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wild thing to know. I mean, I had internships and like fake jobs before that, but I just had a research background. I was like publishing papers in computer vision, machine learning, and I'd done some like research like in the drone space, so like training computer vision models specifically for like drones and improving those. So I had some background that was related to the initial work I was hired for and the role at. But other than that, it was like the only job I had gotten my return offer from Meta, and I was trying to figure out like I've always been a startup guy or, really like always been motivated to be in startups. And I had this big tech offer. I had done a bunch of research. I was like, I want to join the best possible startup join. And in 2018, like it was, it was a very controversial company. Maybe the single most controversial company. If you sort of like think about it, it was a border security company started by a Trump
Well, so
supporter.
I want to say something, which is
Okay.
it actually wasn't that controversial in 2018 because it wasn't even top of mind for a million people. I actually
Maybe,
think
yes.
that's like an interesting twisted retelling of history, which is I think a lot of people had a hard time getting a yes on it, but it was actually like Palmer had been shoved so far to the side coming out of
Yes.
Meta. You know, it was just like in such a small corner box that nobody wanted to do the footwork to understand that I think I mean, it definitely became super controversial, but I actually think when it was found, like when we were talking about it, for us, yeah, it was just more an unexplored I just think it's an interesting way Silicon Valley works that like most
Right.
companies aren't even controversial. They just like didn't hit everyone. You know what I mean? Everyone's like, oh,
Yeah.
Palmer and the Founders Fund guys are working on something in defense. I don't, like dot dot dot. And then all of a sudden, like
Yeah.
2 years later, it starts working, and everybody's like, oh, and it's a right wing, and then it got controversial. I just think that's an interesting footnote.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some aspects of that where like it's just underappreciated. Like defense, that sounds like a shitty market. I don't want to work in defense. Like that's why would I even think about that? That's maybe one of the possible reactions you could have. I do know for a fact though that there were people who saw this deal and like the main reason they passed was like defense. Right? Like defense is evil, right? Like
Yo, sure,
you're not even allowed to invest in it. Your fund charter literally says you cannot invest in weapons
we
or
we had
whatever or
we had
defense or whatever.
in full candor, we had that discussion. You know what I mean? And it's
Yeah,
like,
it was a super
no, it's
common
interesting,
part
but
of yeah.
it wasn't even that controversial. It was just like, oh, this is
Okay.
a thing. We don't do those things. And then it was,
Right.
I just think in classic Silicon Valley, when it became like clear it was working, it became really
Yes.
controversial where it got noisy. It's like, okay,
Right.
now everyone wants to think and debate about it because it's working. Anyway, all right. So you've been sitting in Anduril. Your only context for working in the world is Anduril, which is like
It's
kind
my
of
only context.
a wild fishbowl.
I know. And that does bias me sometimes, to be honest. Like thinking about the whole, like one of the biases of all it's sort of given me is this like almost like I'm almost too biased with like N of one companies. That's the only thing you can do, right? Like and then everything else is just competition is for losers. Do not even think about, doing anything in AI or whatever, right? Like so it's
Okay,
like the
but so
least controlling thing. Yeah.
that. I'm gonna keep interrupting you because that's how my brain
Yeah.
works. But
Go ahead. No, please do.
marry that because I agree with you. I'm a big N of one companies. It's like kind of at our root, which is like, yeah, go find the weird thing that you actually have to think really hard about up front, and then it's rad to do. You are pretty into the $1 billion two-person startup and the get the bag in AI race.
Yeah.
How do you square that with like, okay, the only thing worth doing is N of one companies, but also there, and to me, it's the difference between investing and trading. And the
Yes.
reason I'm not great in AI is like I'm a terrible trader. You know what I mean? I don't have the energy to be on top of the trade to get out on time. And so maybe that's how you square it away. But and I think if an N of one company, it's like you get stock in it, you just hold it forever and you give it to your kids because it's going to compound. So how do you
Right.
square like your love of the $1 billion two-person startup in the AI trade with what you've actually done and are doing with your career and voting with your feet?
Yes. The way I've squared it is so certainly at Anduril, it's like we still have the NF1 company. bet that AI applications are defensible, and we have a very unique set of applications at Anduril. So that makes sense. I agree on the dichotomy. So you said trading versus like, buy and hold. Other framing I have is like sort of fight and win versus don't compete at all, right? Like those are the two. And like you can even like sort of split like companies or venture firms in the valley in these two categories. Like there's firms that their whole mantra is like we're gonna fight harder than anybody else and win. And when you win, you obviously have the payoff. And then there's another sort of set of firms or companies that are like we won't even fight. We're just gonna like do some completely different thing. And that's the other sort of dichotomy. The people who so that the AI trade, at least a lot of the trade has been the fight and win category, where like you have the world's highest, like 20 highest IQ people in the whole world. You put them in like one house, and like you just like fight harder than anybody else, and like that kind of works. I guess it's worked a couple of times now, and that's kind of the complete version of the Peter Thiel truism of like competition is for losers. Is like don't compete, but like if you have to compete, then you're like just absolutely annihilate your enemies or kill them. Like just be ruthless. Yeah, it's kind of a dispositional thing at the end of the day. Like I'm also more on your category, your boat of like just get very freaked out by anybody doing like hyper mimetic behavior or sort of competitive behavior, trying to one up each other. There's many such characters in San Francisco.
So
Uh,
what's as the person sitting at the confluence of AI and defense tech, which are the two probably most mimetic or at least divorced from first principles categories right now.
right.
What is your, I guess, what's your diagnosis on fire or smoke or red flags you're seeing or shit that's making you excited? I'm just curious because I come at it the opposite way of like having zero context for all of those things and thinking they obviously are not in our buy box for slow for the most part for reasons we have. I'm curious your take and reasons for bullishness, bearishness on the things you live and breathe.
I think in both of those categories, there's this big challenge of how do you win without being OpenAI or Anduril, right? Like both of those categories were created effectively by two companies each. And it's really like, what is the play if you're not these companies and like how much of the market do they eat, right? Like I think AI is much bigger than defense, but both those companies, OpenAI is positioned to be like, I don't know, like $1 trillion, for sure, trillion is easy, $10 trillion maybe. And Anduril is similarly big, maybe a couple of order magnitude lower than OpenAI. So yeah, and then what do we do? I think like that's a challenge is people have to figure out different ways to cut the problem space that is already going to get steamrolled by these companies.
I mean, you cut scout checks. Are you sitting there licking your chops and doing a deal a week, or how are you approaching the opportunity set like from actual in reality versus just on X?
Yeah, on the investing side, it's been mostly like I've kept it mostly opportunistic. I'm not like sitting on LinkedIn and chasing out like, okay, this guy left, whatever. Let me just like DM you, whatever. That's don't have time for that. And the role is by far like it takes most of my time. The way I live in San Francisco though, which is different. So like one of the things I've learned living in San Francisco or playing the startup game is that you can't have work-life separation. Like if you start to have separate your work and life, then you're going to get destroyed by people who don't have that separation. Because like everybody's working all the time and like you're going to compress, make your life as efficient as possible. So just living here and like just having like friends basically means that you just naturally meet people who are building an AI and you start investing in them and helping them out. And you meet, investors, you meet other companies, and then you just
Yeah,
become
but all right,
naturally, yeah.
to hold you accountable because that makes sense for your
Okay.
for N of one companies. I mean, what becomes your lens? I think we obviously, I think, have been given a painted with a broad brush that we're like anti-AI, and our answer is like, no, AI is rad, and it's going to disrupt the economics of the world. Like, it's just right now disproportionately going to go to large companies with big distribution, big data sets, and big balance sheets, right?
Right.
Which then makes it hard for us at the AI, like, because like one, we believe that, and two, it's really hard for someone to come and tell us what truly novel. You know what I mean? It is these 20 people with knives hoping one emerges.
Yes.
Given that you admit both those things, I'm wondering if you have a different lens to it, or you're just trying to pick the smartest of the 20 founders that are going to win the knife fight.
So, I mean, yes, it's a big question. I think about this all the time. And, even as I think about the problem space, part of my theory, there is a world where you say that I won't even try to invest or build an AI. That's certainly like a way to do it. It's a hardest strategy for a founder investor because psychologically it's just so, so challenging because the air has been sucked out by AI so intensely that like if you can do it, I feel like almost you will. It's almost like almost maybe you just succeed because just the psychological willpower it takes to do it. And maybe bullish on you guys for that. Like the psychological willpower it takes to not do AI right now is just so high. Um, that being said, it's clearly been the case, and like certainly like to the I will say this statement with a caveat, which is there's a statement to be made, which is like it's OpenAI or bust, right? Like OpenAI is going to become like a $10 trillion company that's going to do everything, and I don't know if that's true or not. It could be true. But there's been two real recent exceptions. Right? I mean the Windsurf acquisition. I mean again, let me tell you a bit in a second. It's like Windsurf outcome and the Cursor outcome, right? These companies became very big and seem somewhat successful at the surface at the very least. One of them has gotten a price from a company, and both of them got a price actually from a company. There's some amount of success they've had with very small teams and able to do the startup thing effectively. The caveat there is like they're all linked to OpenAI. OpenAI is the first investor in Cursor, seed investor in Cursor. Windsurf, is getting its money from OpenAI. So it's like all back to linked to OpenAI. So that's the caveat, which is that maybe it is true that there is nothing to do for small companies. I don't know. That's like the high level take. That being said, there are still people who are starting new companies that are succeeding. There's a few, but it seems early. Like there was this list of like fastest growing AI native companies that I saw on Twitter, and I started sharing that with like all of my smartest friends and like asking them basically which of the companies, if you had $1 billion, which of these companies you would invest in, and they basically I mean, I think sort of like my smartest friends would basically tell me like the same four companies, right? So there's like a few investable companies. I don't know if they're great for seed investors. Like often you get priced out of the seed side, but there is growth opportunities in AI. These companies will succeed, and there's
I'm
some
not convinced.
startups to be made. Yeah.
I, I think for now it's a trade, not an investable category. I
Even for a
actually,
growth investor, let's say you were a growth
yeah, it's just a
investor.
trade. You got to get in, get in, get out, get in, get out. I've told every
Okay.
friend that if that go ahead,
Yeah.
ask.
Why do you feel that way? Like, do you think that they're not going to accumulate value, or like you think that they're just not able to capture value? So they're creating a lot of value. The AI is creating a lot of value. Who's capturing is the big question.
Well, and
And
it's
then,
capturing it against what, right? So like the funnel for me of like rad investable opportunity is
yeah,
economics being fucked with top of funnel, right? Innovation, some delta in the world shakes up the economics in the snow globe, right? Step two is okay, they disproportionately go to some set of players, right? They're like if you shake up economics, but it goes disparate to everybody in the world, like that's hard to invest against and to get the tools left.
what
And
do you
then
mean by that? Like, what do you mean by shake up the economics and then
let's just
disparate to
always
the world?
let's use Google because it's the easiest. We all want
Yeah,
to own Google, right? Which is like
right.
the internet and the internet messed up the economics of the advertising industry dramatically, right? All of a sudden that
Right.
innovation shifts. So that's like, yeah, we should be somewhere in there. Consumer time and attention is changing dramatically. That's going to disrupt the
Right.
economics. Then you go to like Google built like an unbelievable mousetrap. You know what I mean? To like capture a
Yeah.
disproportionate amount of that economic dislocation. So right, second step, like that didn't then get shared with 5,000 parties equally. There
Right.
was some disproportionate share of the economic joy to somebody because of the rate of
Yes.
change, and then they did it third on a sick cost structure, margin structure. Long term, like those are the three things you're lining up to do. And so I think the
Yes. So we have the shake up on AI, right? Are you not even sold on that? Like, okay, are you
the
sold? You're sold
shakeup
on the
on
shake
AI
up.
is very, very
Okay.
real. I think it's going to take a very long time for it to happen to the extent it should. So the shakeup is real.
Yes. Okay.
But then you start going like who disproportionately benefits, right? And you're like, okay, the easy trades become Nvidia, Google, right? Companies that are picks and shovels or
Yes.
have distribution, have data, have customers today where they can drive value on this and have a balance sheet to do something. Then after that, it gets really tricky to figure out back to 20 people in a knife fight to be coding assistants. You know what I mean? It's hard to have like a rock solid thesis on who to cruise to. And then you put it over like, what is the cost to run this business? And like, there's arguments in both directions about, no, it's hard now, but it'll be good later. You know what I mean? There's other
Yeah.
people who are like, yeah, the
Do
problem, like, what I'm good.
you have fundamental issues with the cost structure of AI companies? Like,
I mean,
you think that you know?
right now they're upside down. The cost of compute and inference is like way more than they're able to charge for the most part.
Got it. Got it.
And we don't look every day, but
Everybody's betting that comes down. Like maybe everybody's wrong. It's entirely possible,
well,
but that's
here's
the
the
bet
good,
that people are making.
yeah, which is like a pretty speculative bet to be made at the prices you pay.
Right.
Right, like, hey, I hope there's a good business model here. Is like there are some historical outliers that make you feel good about that, but like there's
Yeah.
it's tough. Um, And it's tough to do it. So like people love DoorDash and Uber, right? Or like the great canonical case studies, like enough equity and time and you get to a good business model. But those had a good case for being winner take mode. Like that wasn't a question of will they win or not. It's like how profitable is it when they win?
Right.
The I'm in a knife fight for product and value creation and business model is like kind of wild to me.
Yeah.
So that and then there's another good argument that people have made, which is listen, as it becomes cheaper to do the thing will be table stakes and you'll have to do an N+1 on your product. Basically, that to remain differentiated in the AI space, that you're going to have to be always at the expensive part of compute and inference. Otherwise, you have no margin. That when it gets cheap to do it, the features and functionality are.
Yes, I would slight push back on that. So before going to this conversation, my mental model on this was like prices are going to come down, but not everybody's going to have the same capabilities. So in certain areas, so basically I've learned that or starting to bet that we're going to go into a world where you're going to have this like multi-specialized AGI world. So it's not going to be like one OpenAI model that's just like better than everybody else. I mean, it will be in most cases, but like for certain applications like coding, for example, you will start to see the emergence of like coding models that are like better than the general purpose models for certain use cases. And certain companies who are able to capture distribution and data flywheels in those verticals will be able to create much better models with the same cost curve. So they will have better capabilities with the collapsing cost curves. And there's no convergence, like you suggest, where like there's a one-to-one motion with cost and capability. And I think that's gonna break where like some people, I mean, that's the bet you have to make. I mean, could be wrong, but that's
No,
the bet
I mean,
you have to
and I
make.
think
Yeah.
we don't have enough clarity in either case. Like the speculation of all the levers times the price times fund size for us is like there's other ways to make money.
I've seen some like you can get some decent AI seeds at like $30 million price. I mean, that's you haven't or you don't think so?
Yeah, we just don't know.
Maybe
We
not
like
the best company, but yeah.
people just don't call us because we've said don't call us. I mean, we're very into what Sam called the AI cherry on top, which is like fundamentally interesting founders, business models, takes, where it's like, oh, and if we nail AI, it'll make it right. Like it'll be a margin enhancer or value prop enhancer. That's probably like our or slightly proprietary. So everyone knows that I love my growth buyout thesis. I backed AI for the revenue cycle management space. We're, but we're solving the margin capture question. You know what I mean? Like we're not selling AI to these people and hoping they use it right. And we built just differentiated enough AI, and then we own and operate the P&L, which is like how we make sure that one, we build a differentiated product because we are, you know what I mean? We're getting different use cases, and two, we at least solve for the business model speculation. Like when we're right, we print free cash flow. So I would say that's probably our approach versus
Yeah.
hopefully we catch one of the 20 coding assistants, right? That like finds its way through because the value prop across 1 to 20 is pretty subjective. You know what I mean? It's kind of like vibes almost. And then once you
Yes.
break through and I mean, I've long said that I think dev investing, this is like my hot take I need to play out. I think dev tools investing is basically consumer investing because when the value prop is like time, like it doesn't save anyone hard dollars. You know what I mean? It makes devs more productive. That's kind of in the eye of the value. That's kind of in the eye of the beholder.
Yes.
So I do feel a lot of the AI that like the value prop over the other players is kind of squishy. And so like it's like taste. It's
Yes.
like
It's a
investing in
lot
an artist.
harder. It's a lot know that at the seed stage. Almost impossible, right? Like I don't know. Like it's just everybody's
It's just
pitching you the
art.
same
It's an
thing.
art. It's an art project. You're like, oh, that
Right.
person has better taste, which I think is like a terrible capitalist.
I think that's fair. I think what you said is also true in many of these companies where, like, you're right, like the AI isn't even like the differentiator is like a way to enter a new problem space. And then you're just building what was always being built in software, which is network effects or switching costs or whatever. Right?
I did an AI one, but like the only real AI angle is the adoption. So I guess here's how my brain works: is this sector is like you haven't been able to crack the sector from adoption standpoint, and so what AI there's just like logical workflows and logical logic to put into these businesses. But it turns out that AI being able to read, so like we're going to build some hard workflow process software, but now they don't need to do anything for implementation because AI can basically turn all of their unstructured data into structured data without them doing it. And then we'll earn the right to do some obvious stuff quickly on some proprietary intellectual property. and then ride the rest of the commodity AI wave longer dated. Does that make sense?
I think it does. I don't know if this is what you meant, but certainly like just the sheer excitement around AI does, like get you a wedge into a new vertical or workflow that previously were just too annoying to get into. It just having the AI piece is like intriguing enough for a customer, check it out, and then you secretly build your existing business behind the scene. You just
Well, yeah,
yeah.
it's like that solves the customer acquisition problem, which is actually why the industry hasn't been touched by software dramatically. Then you have a whole era of building pretty logical, but like tools that take some actual knowledge. And then you can write another wave of now that you've done that, now that you're the one who turned unstructured data into structured and you're doing the obvious lift, then you can write AI again on the top of it, I guess would be like my most bullish AI just software take. This is fun, dude. We filled half an hour quickly. You got any questions for me? I talked a lot. Do you want to, you want to ask me anything or?
Yeah, like I guess like let me think what is on mind.
It's all good if it's nothing. This is fun for me.
Yeah, I mean, what is your maybe one last hot take is like what is something not AI that you would want to build or invest in? Yeah. What is the most exciting thing in not in AI right now? Just not AI.
I don't know if this is not. So my two like highest conviction takes that I don't think are from central casting are related. One is I think most of the margin from automation, both physical and software, is going to accrue to the services layer actually.
Yeah.
So like we're going after warehouse and shipping automation, but we're just going to build a new 3PL provider. Actually, all the equity going into like a lot of the opportunity in the world exists right now because these industries are shitty to sell technology to.
Right.
And I don't think making better technology like solves them being shitty customers.
Why? Why?
Well, so think about the 3PL space, think about the shipping space, right? These people do not have expansive balance sheets. They operate in thin margin businesses. The interesting thing for automation in that space is it takes what is a square footage game and turns it into a cubic foot game. Because you don't have humans, you can now go 5 stories high with your storage and retrieval systems. So you all of a sudden what you can do at 10,000 cubic feet, what you can do, or 10,000 square feet, you can do in 100 because you can go up. So you have these legacy players with like thin balance sheets, thin margins, and a lot of sunk costs into legacy systems. They can only pay you so much. Like they won't get full value prop out of your innovation, and they don't have a ton of liquidity to do it.
Right. But then can you automate some of the like services piece, which seems like the bottleneck, right? Or is that like very hard to
Well,
automate?
that the point is, so then you start a competitor, right, with a clean balance sheet who's able to take advantage of it from the day zero. And can you run a massively more profitable services layer that's equity efficient and takes advantage of all the automation?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are trying that. Like, do you believe in that? Like, I always
I don't actually think a lot of people are they're vertically integrated. I don't think a ton of people are actually betting with their like Anduril is interesting because it's doing this, but it's so horizontal now and it raised enough equity to go horizontal that they can do it. Some of the people like in autonomous ships, I'm kind of wondering if that's actually going to be the thing or it's going to be someone goes out and makes the purchase of a bunch of autonomous ships and then like
right.
resells a fleet as a service. Anyway,
Yes.
that's like hot take number one is like I think automation venture VCs haven't liked services businesses because they're not sticky, they're low quality, low margin revenue, they're not that high value
Correct.
prop. I think we're at a moment in time where automation actually changes the game over legacy so that you can actually take market share and do it with really high margins.
Has there been any examples of this sort of showing this to shift, or
I
what are
don't have
the?
one. No, I don't have just things I'm excited about that I'm not talking about yet. But like I've said, I'm going to pull a deck, and then I think the other one is related. It's by growth by buyout, which is like the cheapest the cheapest highest value customer acquisition for a lot of vertically built solutions is to just buy your customer out and run it dramatically more profitably. Like that it's kind of getting picked up mainstream. I think a lot of people read that as roll ups and I'm like, no, I don't want to do 100 acquisitions. That's hard. I want to do like
Right.
3 and own 100 billion of EBITDA. So I think that's the other plot that we're chasing or I'm chasing. We got other plots. So those would be my two.
Both of those venture opportunities, early stage venture opportunities.
Math to
Wow.
venture opportunity. They just like you have to do math. You have to like actually get an Excel and go like, what does it mean, right, to run those playbooks and like, what is how do you use the equity, right? They're definitely not raise 300 and a billion in the first year.
Right.
Run by like capital efficient founders who give a shit. I'm like, I just want to do things where it's like, how do we get to 500 million of EBITDA in 8 or 9 years? And like whether someone values that at 10 or 100x, either way, I can like sleep well.
No, that's totally reasonable. Yeah, it's refreshing to hear something not in AI. So love it.
Thanks for making it through all of that. As always, smash the subscribe button. I think that's what everybody says. And more importantly, let us know if you don't agree. We always love being disagreed with. You can follow me on Twitter at WQuist, QUIST, or follow Slow. They retweet most of everything all of us say anyway. So at SLOW. And we'll see you next time.